content warning. On this podcast, we discuss sensitive issues, including, but not limited to, swearing, tasteless jokes, situations of a sexual nature, and drug use. This podcast is not intended for children. Welcome to Bibliowrecks, where we read the worst books the world has to offer. I'm Bam Bam.
And I'm Bugs.
How you doing, Bugs?
I read this book 5 times, and I'm very tired of it.
It seems like it. That book looks worn.
Yeah, the inside is so marked up. I would not give this book away. I would have to keep it forever.
Yeah.
It is full of my thoughts.
So what are we reading?
I read Eternal River by Thomas G. Young. It's a self-published novel, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
It lies.
I'm so excited. I've been waiting for so long for you to
I
do
know. I
this.
started reading this 2 months ago, and I've been teasing you ever since. This is the first book that's ever lied to me. Have you had a book lie to you before?
Yeah, I think one, and I was also pretty upset about it.
Right, because you read the back or the description, and it says, this book is blah, blah, blah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're like, oh, I'm expecting blah, blah, blah during the whole book. When does it show up? The back of this book says it's an all ages, 14 and up, fantasy that follows James from the eve of his 18th birthday into a surreal Twilight Zone journey. So you're expecting fantasy and like a coming of age story. The only fantasy in this book is a river monster and magical thinking.
Oh, that's not at all like The Lightning Thief.
No, it's disappointing in all of the worst ways. And it's frustrating because I have to give you context for what I was expecting and then what I got. Because otherwise we'll be going through it and you'll keep being like, wait, what's going on? Wait, what's happening? Because that's what I did the whole time and why I had to read it several times.
It's like really loosely organized of a story, like just can't keep a hold of it while you're reading it, or just hard to explain?
No, you think fantasy. And the book starts out where he is living in his normal life and then he moves into this alternate reality. So I was expecting it to be something like Alice in Wonderland. You go, you follow the white rabbit and you fall through the tree, and now you're in an upside down world where everything is bizarre, right?
Right.
Or you
get isekai'd into another world.
Right, where you just go into an alternate dimension, or like even like Narnia, where you go through the wardrobe, you're now in this other world.
Yeah. And
the things that happen there follow certain rules of mythology or fantasy. And that's its self-enclosed world. And then you come back and you've learned lessons, you've grown as a person, but nobody believes you because, you know.
Right. It's too fantastic.
Right. That's what I was expecting. But what I got was something much similar, much more like,
mundane?
No, The Pilgrim's Progress.
Oh, right.
Because I told you to read The Pilgrim's Progress or just watch a synopsis.
And I did the least amount of work possible.
Well, I just needed you to understand the Christian journey allegory.
Yeah, the incredibly just stone blunt allegory.
Where his name is Christian and he has to go through the narrow gate and his friend is faithful and they have to walk to the celestial city, and when they cross the river, that's them dying, and they see Jesus and gain the white robes, and that's the end of the story.
Very thick, on the nose allegory.
Very on the nose. Like everyone is named what they are.
Yeah. Arguing for a very particular kind of faith.
Yes, I think it was like Protestant is like very against the Catholics at the time. It was very old. And in some ways, like Narnia does the allegory, but it's a little bit better, you know, better storytelling, better
Certainly
characters. Yeah. This is written by Thomas Young, who is he died in, I think 2020. He was a Christian Scientist.
Oh, no.
And they believe that reality Like, physical things aren't real.
Mm-hmm.
Only spirit is real.
Yeah, it's like a simulation that God made.
Mm-hmm. And if you can change your mind, you can change the things that happen around you.
Oh, everyone can be Neo from the Matrix.
Yes, if you believe hard enough, you can be Neo, which means if bad things happen to you, sickness, you lost a job, you got cancer, it's your fault because you are thinking about the bad thing. This is really weird. I found out that Christian Scientists will sell prayers for $25, and you go through a class and become certified. You can call these people up, pay them with a credit card, and they will pray for you. That's a real thing.
I'm sadder now. Boy, that sucks for people to do.
Yes.
Oh, that's gross.
Children have died from this belief system because their type 1 diabetes is ignored. Childhood cancer is ignored.
Yeah, they don't believe in like casting up people's arms because if God wanted it healed, he'd have done that.
They would they would have perfect thought and it would just fix it. It kind of depends on the specific congregation, and they do not have any clergy. They only have lay people, and they all have the ability to do these prayers. Nobody is like supposed to be higher than anyone else. They have a bigger, like a leadership group, but everything seems to be fairly decentralized, and the congregations are fairly small. I went way down the rabbit hole.
Yeah, it seems like we're going to be
doing
in the rabbit hole for a while.
And I tried really hard to just get as simple a synopsis as I could.
Right.
But if you can imagine Narnia, except it is a Christian Scientist story and much more poorly done. That's what we're walking into. He has self-important high language, like he's Tolkien or the C.S. Lewis, but his writing is bad. So that's why I'm going to read a lot of quotes to you.
Oh, boy.
Because he sounds like a 14-year-old who read... Remember when we did Aragon? It feels very much like a kid who is like, I can be Tolkien. I can be C.S. Lewis. I don't know how to write, but I can be them.
Yeah, can't wait. I love narcissistic young people.
Except this guy was in his 50s.
Oh.
This is an old guy.
That's a different kind of ego.
Yes.
I'm excited.
Now we can start the story.
Yay.
I had to write a whole page of just
context.
This is the context. Because reading the book on its own didn't make any sense. Very much like back when we had No More Heroes, and I was like, this is confusing. Now I'm able to show you and the listeners how this was supposed to make sense to the author or his specific audience.
Well, I mean, if he was a Christian Scientist and this was, they're all just lay people, I mean, it's kind of hard just to pin somebody down on their personal belief system. So yeah,
it's very confusing because I thought it was going to be more Seventh-day Adventist or something slightly different. That's the background, the base layer that we're building everything else on top of. We start our story by following James. It's his 18th birthday. So he is a young, fresh 18-year-old who's a hardened drunk.
Oh.
And just got off his shift at the local factory.
So not a good birthday.
Not a good birthday, and everyone at the bar knows him. He has drinking buddies.
What year was this written?
2011 is the copyright. Not long ago. Yeah. I mean, 12 years. Not that long ago,
yeah,
though.
The drinking age wasn't different.
No, the drinking age was not different.
Is it like set in present times?
That is a good question because I cannot answer that. He is having his first legal drink in the bar.
At 18?
At 18.
Yeah.
But he's been there drinking for, it feels like years. He feels like a middle-aged, hardened factory worker who comes in and gets drunk off his ass every Friday.
Oh.
And he fights with his girlfriend. He is surly. He's mean. He gets into fights. But also, this is his first legal drink.
So your average man about the world, not your goodly Christian man.
No, he's not a good kid. He's like a bad kid, kind of.
Yeah.
But we're inside of his head following him. Everything is pretty much from his perspective.
This already just sounds like an old lady's idea of what young people are doing these days.
Yeah, he drinks beer. And it's not strong enough, so he chases it with a shot of brandy.
That's weird.
Everything I read online says people don't do that.
Yeah, I've never heard of anyone doing that.
I've never heard of that.
I've seen a lot of people do stupid things with alcohol, and that's new.
I think the guy who wrote this never had a drink in his life, and this was his guess of how 18-year-olds drink. Like, he'd never been in a bar. He didn't even know legal drinking age was 21. I think this author just either didn't know or didn't care,
right? Or
his place that this kid is living is its own world. The town is Riverton. It's on a river.
Shock.
The kid, James, works at a local factory. We don't know what they do there. It's just a factory. He lives in an apartment with his girlfriend, Bethany, and they moved in together like over the summer. So they've been together for a while.
Living in sin.
That part's not addressed. It's not an issue. Nobody cares. He moved out of his parents because he would fight with them. He'd get drunk and fight with his parents. So he moved in with Bethany, and he drinks and gets in fights with her.
No reason to root for this guy so far.
No. So he's at the bar. He's finally legal, having a drink with the boys. They are like, yep, he's legal. He's 18. Right, Jamie boy? He's like, James, to you, big mouth. Big deal. So I'm the last guy here to join the club. At least I'm not gray or fat like a few people I know. Like, he's just belligerent and rude.
Yeah.
Finally leaves. He goes to the part where he's supposed to have a birthday cake with his girlfriend. She's there. She's super pretty. She has a beautiful dress. And she's upset because parents have come and gone. It's an hour later than he was supposed to be there. It's windy. All the food is cold. And he thinks about picking up the cake and throwing it, but finally doesn't. And instead, she packs up the food and leaves, and he goes back to the bar.
What a dick.
He's a dick. She's upset because he's been drinking and a dick.
Yeah.
He's angry. She sings him happy birthday, but he's just dejected and pissed off. So he goes back to the bar. He drinks more and more and more. The barkeep feels bad for him, so gives him some more brandy. So he's mixing beer with brandy, just drinking them at the same time. The barman is like, 18 isn't the end of the world, you know. I didn't start getting the right view or really enjoying myself until I hit 18. The guys and James is like, if you think 10 years in this town is childhood, and he's like, nah, I know. And it just doesn't make any sense. I don't know what the point is.
I mean, it just sounds like one of those guys that got burnt out at a high school or were burnt out by the time they got out of high school.
I don't know if they went to high school. I don't know if there's school in this world.
If he's been at a factory for years now,
right?
At the very least, he was co-opted out.
I don't know, because this isn't normal America. The author lived in, like, Milwaukee, or somewhere in the Midwest.
And he grew up in, the 60s or 70s?
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, James wants more beer. The barkeep is cutting him off because he's staggering, he's fighting, he's drunk. James sees a pitcher on a table, and he runs over and picks it up and tucks it under his armpit and runs out the door, which in my mind would spill all the beer all over you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't happen. He just goes out the door, runs away, and sips on it while he walks down to the river.
I mean, honestly, it's not worth my time to chase an 18-year-old that is just acting like a dick. If I were the bartender, I'd just let him go too.
Yeah. He's just like, whatever, I don't care. He gets down to the river and he empties the beer, throws it in the river, and he sees a little tiny man at the river pulling a string from the river. And this little tiny man is the size of a child but has a middle-aged man's face. He's not a little person. He pulls a corked jug out of the river and starts drinking it.
Oh, is he a leprechaun?
I don't know. I can't answer that.
I'm disappointed that the answer wasn't yes.
He's an elf, but not really. James sees him drinking and wants some. The little man says, be careful. My people call it green port, but I call it green death. And he just watches James gulp it down. And then James passes out.
I guess alcohol poisoning isn't a reality here either.
No, because he has been drinking steadily since 5 o'clock. And this is like midnight. And he should be sick and throwing up.
Yeah.
He wakes up in a little boat going down the river. It's a little fishing boat. He is hot. He's worried Bethany is going to be upset with him.
Oh, now he's worried.
Now he's worried because he's having a horrible hangover. He's thirsty. He is now in the other world. So I had laid out the path of we're going through the looking glass. We're going through the wardrobe.
Is the cabinet,
This drinking the green port is what takes him to this other world. James doesn't know or consent to this.
Does this green alcohol mean any? Is it symbolizing something?
It symbolizes that drinking is bad and he has to go learn his lesson. And it takes him to this other world. The river seems to be the journey that like Christian in Pilgrim's Progress takes. And it felt like the river was the metaphor because there's places along the way like cool water. There's like a desert and there's a swamp and there's these different places along the way.
Right.
So it feels to me like the river and the journey on it is the metaphor of his life. Several times he tries to say, I want to get back home. I want to go back to Riverton. And everyone is confused and doesn't know what Riverton is. They don't know where he came from. They never heard of his town. He's never heard of them. He's in this completely other world where everything is very strange.
Right.
He's hungover. He's going down the river. He tries to get to the edge of the river, but he thinks that it's tree roots and instead it's snakes that are twisting around and wiggling. So he's using his arms to paddle. He doesn't have oars.
It sounds like a nightmare I've had.
It feels like a nightmare, I guess. Yeah. Here's a quote that I thought was funny. For a terrifying moment, only his pulse escaped paralysis because the snake scared him.
Oh, yeah, that seems a little overwritten to me.
It's a little overwritten. He is using his arms to propel the rowboat. I don't know how. Like, I guess he's like face forward in the boat with both arms in the water paddling.
I guess so, yeah. That's what I imagine.
He's thirsty. He feels bad. He's drifting with the current. And then he gets knocked into something and goes overboard. He hears someone yelling, "Man overboard!" These people on this boat pull him and his fishing boat out of the river. And this crew that he meets, he spends the rest of the book with them. I have already complained to you about how they say it's a barge.
I've heard a lot about boats here in the last couple of weeks.
I am going to spare our listeners the angry ranting about how this isn't a barge. This is a steam riverboat. They shouldn't call it a barge. He calls it a barge the whole book.
On a technicality, this is, he's wrong.
On this technicality, he's quite wrong, and it's infuriating. Because if your whole story is on a river in a boat,
yeah, you'd think you'd look into it a bit.
You should know something about boats. He meets Captain Oxford, who pulls him out, and something that happens a few different times. When people drink this river water from like falling overboard, or if it gets in an open wound, it makes them extremely ill.
Oh.
Like this river water is toxic.
Some town upriver is just piping their septic.
That's what it seems. River. So he drank it, or, when he got thrown overboard, he was sputtering when he came up. So water got into his mouth and it makes him extremely ill.
Oh, I bet that's allegory. Like if the river is like the life journey and life is just in general toxic or something.
I don't know, because at one point later, someone gets an open wound and water splashes into it and he gets the river sickness too. It didn't seem to really mean anything. It felt like it was supposed to.
Yeah. I don't know. I feel like there's something there. Like life is inherently sinful and
it contaminates you, maybe.
Yeah.
Like the river itself is dangerous in the whole book.
Yeah.
And parts of the river are dangerous.
Maybe that's the allegory.
Could be.
I don't know. I read listened to stuff about the Pilgrim's Progress, and literally everything in that is just allegory. So that's what I'm keyed in on.
Well, and it feels so allegorical because of the names. The names are so on the nose. There's a young woman who is wiping a wet cloth on his face because he's sick. She doesn't speak, but their eyes meet. Her eyes were very expressive, reminding him of a doe or some such forest creature. He thought it odd she didn't smile in return or speak, but her gentle touch and haunting eyes made a deep impression on him. He's like enamored of her, and she's beautiful and mysterious. Her name is Rachel, and she is mute. And they use that to make her childlike and animal-like.
Oh. Yeah, I was going to ask, does this book happen to pass the Bechdel test? I'm going to bet it doesn't.
It might, because I think 2 women talk about Rachel.
Okay.
There are 3 women. They are each in a caretaking or cooking role. But the men don't really have anything interesting to do either. I didn't feel like they had much less. I find Rachel's story more problematic. But I didn't find that part of it. Like, I didn't really find a lot of overt misogyny or anything like that.
Yeah, surprising green check mark.
Yeah. It was, I think it might partly be because Christian Scientist was built by a woman, Mary Baker Eddy. She was the leader, the creator, and everyone kind of worships her in Christian Scientist is what it seemed like.
Kind of a
to
pseudo-saint.
me. Very much their saint, their prophetess. The one who, founded their church. Her writings are what they read. Her writings are what they follow and obey.
Yeah.
So I feel like there's a character later named Abigail, and she is definitely based on Mary Baker Eddy. And she is like a goddess. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
James is sick, feels awful. He's laying down. They're nursing him back to health. So I had just read you that sentence about her eyes made a deep impression on him. He's thinking about her, and James wondered about the young woman with the unusual eyes he'd seen earlier and whether she'd been for real.
What?
Which is such an odd sentence when you had just had this very flowery language. The writing waffles back and forth between casual, really casual language.
Yeah.
Like whether she'd been for real is a casual thing someone would say and not necessarily write, because he also haunting eyes and deep impression. It combines flowery Lord of the Rings language with just common vernacular, which I found very strange. He hears Elf's music, and Elf is a very, very short person with the face of a middle-aged man who is an albino.
Whoa. What? Whoa. Number 1, what's Elf's music?
He plays a violin, and it is magical, but not really. And Rachel dances to it, and that's magical, but not really.
What?
It just makes everyone happy, and they're enamored of them.
Oh, okay.
They make a big deal out of it, but nothing comes from it. And this is like an every evening thing at sunset. Elf plays the fiddle or the violin. They call it both multiple times. They call him a fiddler and a violinist multiple times.
I guess that can be sort of interchangeable.
Well, it depends on how you're playing it, because it changes. That has the little chin hold thing. And it changes how you're playing it.
Right.
They also say he plays wonderful primitive music. And they call him Albo, short for albino, and they make a deal out of him being an albo, and it's really derogatory.
I don't like Albo.
Yeah, I don't like that either, and I don't know why they do that. Because he's just another part of the crew.
Yeah. He's an elf? Like, does he get...
His name is Elf.
Oh, his name is Elf.
They call him Elf. They don't know what his name is, and he's fine with them calling him Elf. At one point, and Albo, and at one point he dreams of elven maidens, and he talks about his people, and he has the magical ability to sense forests.
What a stupid power. Since there's a forest nearby.
Yes.
Oh gosh. That's so weird.
So that's Elf. That's one character. We meet the farmer. They're hauling the farmer and his tractor downriver to try to find him farmland. His name is Turf.
Oh, okay.
So I'm feeling like everyone's named what they are.
Hey there, Dirt.
Turf, yes.
Oh my god, he's Joe Dirt.
Yeah. The store owner who went bankrupt, his name is Rusty.
I don't get that one.
I don't get that one either, but it's like, it felt like we were supposed to be following a pattern.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Evelyn and Sylvie are just older ladies who do the cooking and washing. And they are going on the boat. And Oxford is the captain.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel is his daughter. Jesse is the river rat that they sort of adopted. He's an orphan and he's like 10 years old.
Oh, just like a little urchin that does shenanigans.
Yes. And he runs around and scrubs the floors and cleans up, and he's very happy and cheerful and cute, I guess.
Nice. Hey.
Yeah?
You know who else bankrupts companies? These sponsors, because the deals are just unreal. These deals are for real.
Are these deals for real?
Ads. Hey, Biblio fans, friends, and fiends. Just taking a moment to tell you how to find our growing community. We're on Facebook and Instagram, where we try to post as often as we can. We have a subreddit that will start as soon as we get over our crippling fear of it. And, of course, our YouTube. Look us up at Bibliowrecks, spelled Bibliowrecks. We would love to hear suggestions and chat about bad books there, as well as over email. Our email is bibliowrecks@gmail.com. Thanks for listening. Now let's get back to that bad book.
And we're back with the introductions to the crew.
Oh boy, I love big character intros.
They're eating food, and it's just, these are the people sitting at the table eating dinner. And the last person is Reverend Dennis. You know what I really, really felt going through this was that we were doing Firefly, because you have Captain Mal, who's a grouchy atheist who makes fun of the preacher, and then you have Preacher, and you have the people paying their way, and everyone's traveling to get somewhere else. None of these people are actually crew. The only crew members are Oxford and Rachel. Oh. Everyone else is going to get off at some point.
So it's just a bunch of people that are traveling, and they're like train buddies or like school friends.
Like they just happen to be going the same direction at the same time.
And it's easier for you to just be friends with them and be friendly for the
and just
short
get along.
time you know them. Yep.
Oxford is like, you know, James, you can just come along and stay with us while we're going down. Their destination is the port of Jossandra. And it's Jossandra. Jossandra? Jossandra?
I hate that.
And it's Port of Jossandra. It's the full name every time, pretty much.
You're not allowed to go to Jossandra, but you can go to the port of Jossandra.
That's the name of the place.
It'd be funny if the city's name was like just something totally different.
Right? James is like, I want to go back to Riverton. Oxford is like, where's that? Ha ha ha. It's not far from where you picked me up. And he's like, I never heard of a town near there.
Yeah. All you have to say is upriver.
Yeah, like a town upriver.
Yeah.
I've never heard of the port of Jossandra, said James. I'm from Riverton myself. Never heard of it, said Oxford, perhaps mocking James. And it don't surprise me none about you not knowing the river. He frowned and gave James a cool stare, as if questions were a needless bother. So Oxford is kind of cantankerous and weird.
Is Oxford supposed to represent like schools, collegiate education or something?
He's driving the boat. He doesn't ever really believe any of the belief stuff that like Dennis brings up. He doesn't ever go ashore at the port of Jossandra. He does this run all the time. And he never goes and partakes of the port himself. So he's attached to his boat. He won't leave it.
He doesn't do anything, basically doesn't do anything, and thinks he knows better than everyone. That seems like a lot of people's bad opinions about college.
Could be.
I might be giving too much credit.
It's just really frustrating because these other people have names that say what they are. And then Oxford is like, he's more like Mal from Firefly. He's more the cantankerous captain who runs the ship and keeps everything working. He's also the one not letting James get off or go back. And he's also very vague about where they are, where they're going. He doesn't like questions, is really, you know, the captain and the boss of everybody and everything. And he's just not cooperative.
Yeah, kind of just sounds like a plot device.
More like that, yeah. Or possibly worldly authority. Like he is the boss at work, not your spiritual leader. Yeah. This is the guy you have to deal with to get where you want to go.
Right. That's kind of what I was leaning toward, like collegiate intellectual authorities, like a professor at Oxford College or something like that, maybe.
Yeah, and also completely unwilling to even, like, consider religion.
Right.
He's like, that's all hogwash. I live in the real world.
Yeah.
Even though they live in this other world, dream world place that is, like, not real, kind of. They had tied up at the edge of the river when James was, like, recuperating, and a whole bunch of snakes come off of the bank and into the boat. And they're, like, 7 foot long, what are they called?
Pythons?
I think they were bull snakes, which are just completely harmless.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're just, like, completely harmless, just like a bull snake or something. They mention Gargoyle, which is a giant river monster.
Okay.
Gargoyle is the giant river monster that is kind of the bad guy in the book. James feels like that's what he must have seen in the river and it scared him. But this snake is actually like 100 feet long.
Oh, it wouldn't even...
10, 15 feet wide. Like, it's huge.
How big is this river?
Well, the boat itself is 25 feet wide, which is way bigger than a regular river barge would be. So this river has to be huge. And he really has left normal geography because there's no farmland. There's no animals except for the snakes. They don't see deer. They don't see farmland. They don't see... There's like swampy trees and fog. Initially, they're going through a swamp and there's snakes. And then they go into a desert and the river is in the middle of a desert. Why I keep coming back to this is a Christian faith journey is you're going down the river, it's swampland, it's inhospitable. The only life is inside this boat on this river. And then they are going through desert. There's no animals, there's no plants. They have a brief stop at Coolwater, which is a little tiny oasis in the desert that Oxford owns. And then they keep going. And there's Devil's Run or something, Devil's Canyon, places that are dangerous along the way. And they only start seeing animals and plants when they get within the Port of Jossandra's territory. That's how Oxford knows that they're getting close, because he sees sheep, deer, trees, farmland, and grass. So between Riverton, wherever James got into this world, and the Port of Jossandra, everything is inhospitable, like no vegetation.
Trying to get you.
Yeah, so it's like a really alien landscape. So that's why it feels like this has to be allegory, because this makes no sense.
Yeah, it doesn't.
From a geography or fantasy perspective.
Like, this feels like a very singular kind of journey. Like, certainly doesn't feel like there's like a wider world to this.
No, it doesn't. Yeah. It feels like this world is only on this river. There's no towns. There's almost no other people. It's really strange. James meets everybody, gets to know everybody. He wants to go back, and he's like, he's upset about the snakes. And he's like, listen, I've seen some crazy stuff and I don't want to see any more. I'm not interested in sailing on a floating zoo. I want off this crate. And Oxford gets mad because he called his boat a crate. And Oxford says, matter of fact, you don't look so good right now. Maybe Sylvia's right. From your white face, I'd say river fever too. Ever had it before? And James is like, never heard of it. But he noticed the dizziness again, and it began to get darker, although his eyes were wide open. Oxford suggesting that James has river fever makes him sick. And he gets sick, and he even thinks, did they poison my food? Because he got ill so quickly.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, I would immediately think that they're doing something to me.
He becomes better, thinks Rachel is really pretty. He gets better, he eats, he drinks, he's like, okay. And he just becomes part of the ship's crew. He forgets about Bethany, he forgets about his home, he just becomes one of them. And this world is just strange, and he keeps thinking, this can't be real. This world isn't real. It's like when you're having a dream and you're like, am I dreaming?
Yeah.
Where you kind of have a lucid dream. And that's how it's written. And that part is, it's okay. But this boat doesn't have a radio. They don't call anyone, no one to call. They don't see any other boats on the river.
Does the story at least, like, I don't know, like, give some, like, anecdotes and backstory to the other characters at all?
It seemed like they came from a specific town. We don't know the name of the town. Oxford does this run regularly, and he only goes from wherever he came from to the port of Jassandra and then back. And the other people have just that little story of, oh, she's sick with cancer, so she's going to the port of Jassandra to get healed. This one heard that that's where you get all the answers to life's important questions. It's like a pilgrimage.
Right.
Sort of. Turf is wanting to find farmland, and that's why he's just going down the river looking for farmland along the way that he can just move into.
Oh.
Elf is looking for a forest.
What? No.
That is his goal. That's why
I thought he knew where the forests were.
Oxford promised that he would find Elf a very nice forest to go live in.
But Elf should already know where he's got his one ability is that he always knows where a forest is, and he doesn't, he's looking for it. He doesn't know where. Okay. So far, Elf is the best part of the book, and he's making me insanely mad.
You know what's funny? He is wearing green tights, a white t-shirt, and a little blue jacket. So they give him modern clothing, but kind of tie it like an old court jester or something. It's very strange.
Those are really weird colors to wear.
Yeah. The idea is that playing his violin and Rachel dancing is the evening's entertainment for the people on the boat. But this is the first time Rachel has ever gone on this trip with her dad. And Elf is wanting to find a forest to live in. So, I don't know. That part, it just doesn't really matter. It's just kind of strange.
Yeah, it is. Everything's strange so far.
Yes. Rachel's dancing. He makes a point of mentioning that she has boobs and a pretty butt, because when she's twirling in a circle, her skirt comes up and you see her buttocks and her underwear, and she's 17, and he's 18. Yeah. So it's not weird.
It's not,
but the perspective that this feels like it's written by an old guy, it feels gross. Yeah. And the fact that she's mute, she just serves everyone. People boss her around. She's treated like a child. Yeah. She looks like a scared doe. Like they compare her to like a skittish doe or, a wild animal. It's very weird.
Is she the new love interest?
Kind of. He kisses her several times.
Oh, okay.
And she's like kind of okay with it sometimes.
I mean, she can't say no.
She can back up and push away, but he just looks deeply into her eyes and has to decide she looks uncertain or she looks okay. It's really, really weird. Everyone is drinking, and that's important. Rachel dances, Elf is playing, her dance ends, everyone's drunk, and then Gargle attacks. Gargle! Damned Gargle! Giant river serpent! Off the port bow! And this thing is just huge. Oxford starts speeding up the ship, speeding up the boat to get away. It comes over and is like looking at them, and its like head is way up high, like super tall. And it comes down and it looks at them, and they take fishing poles and smack it. And that's how they get rid of it.
Okay.
Like literally just smacking at it with fishing poles.
If that's all it takes, I wouldn't have worried about him either. Yeah, you'd think that if Oxford makes this journey relatively often, you'd think he had like some sort of plan.
Yeah, he yells at them to go get his gun, but they didn't load it, so that didn't work. He finally gets to full steam, and the creature eased back and then is gone. So they're very happy and they cheer because they defeated Gargle.
This very solvable problem is gone now. Yay.
Well, everyone's really scared of Gargal, and it kind of felt like maybe this was an Ahab, Moby Dick thing, because Oxford hates Gargal. Later in the book, we find out that Gargal ate his wife at night, like a snake, like opening its mouth and just swallowing her whole. And that's when Rachel became mute.
Oh, so she's like psychologically tortured?
Yes.
And this happened recently.
No, that happened 7 years ago.
Oh, I thought Rachel had never been on the boat before.
She had been when she was 10 and her mother was alive.
Oh, okay.
And then she went to go live with family when her mom got eaten. And now he's taking her down the river with him. And so he knows Gargal is out there. He hates Gargal. He has like a shotgun that he doesn't keep loaded. And they just try to outrace it. And it's like this torment that happens over and over and over again. I think they get attacked by Gargal 3 or 4 times. Almost every time is because they'd been drinking and having bad thoughts. So it's like, oh, they've been drinking and partying, and Gargal attacks. Is what seems to be the pattern.
What is that supposed to mean?
The end result of the book is drinking is bad. That's the moral of the story. When we get to the end of the book. Drinking is bad. What? And he's learned his lesson. And he's never going to touch another drop. But it's so not explained that I had to go back multiple times and be like, when does Gargal attack? Why does he attack? Oh, each time this bad thing happens, it's because they were drinking and then this bad thing happens.
Right.
But it's never a direct cause and effect, which I think is part of the problem with Christian Scientist thinking is there is no cause and effect between your thoughts and the thing that happens.
Right.
And so it's really vague. It's not direct. It's not, oh, I've been drinking, so I fall overboard and drown.
You're doing a bad thing, so bad things happen to you.
Right. It's oh, I had a lustful thought, and now
I'm being attacked by a giant dildo.
Well, in a lot of Christian thinking, it's, oh, I lost my job. Oh, it must be because you were rebellious or didn't pray enough or you did this, other thing. Like, it's really not connected because if something bad happens to you, it's because God is punishing you. But in their theology, it's bad things are happening because you had bad thoughts and the drinking causes the bad thoughts. Everyone becomes like belligerent and angry and stuff like that when they're drinking.
Yeah, I get
it's badly done. Very badly done, which is why it's on this podcast.
So drinking just makes you sinful in general. And that's when the bad snake monster tries to eat you.
They hadn't been drinking when Gargal ate Oxford's wife. They were night fishing. And he kind of fell asleep. And when he woke up, she was being sucked inside of his maw.
She had an impure thought.
Well, and he did mention that Rachel's maw drank too much. Like she was a drunkard. And he's afraid of Rachel going the same way, but if he says anything, she will drink more by him, like, arguing with her. And Rachel even drinks and passes out. We're still at the kind of getting to know everybody point. And James is like, I've never heard of the port of Jossandra. What is that? And Reverend Dennis is on a sabbatical because he was a pastor for a congregation. And he heard about Jossandra and wants to go learn more about her way of thinking. Dennis is quoting this book. It said, Jossandra said to her people, you don't understand the nature of sight. People see what they believe. Sight is really understanding given by divine intelligence. And then Rusty says, so maybe we see monsters because we believe in them? Said Rusty with a cackle. I never thought of it like that, Rusty. You might have something there, said Reverend Dennis. So we're laying the foundation for the monster only exists because somebody thought of it. And it gets thought of from drinking.
I see what you mean by the magical thinking.
Yes. This is just pulling up that we're building. The magical thinking is the cause of these things happening on this river. The next day, they're tied up at the side of the river because there's a storm. Let's see. I think Elf and James go on shore. They go on shore and see what Oxford is doing. And he's like, untying them or something. But as they're coming up, there's this strange man standing in the galley eating all their donuts. And this is when I don't use the G word. I say Romani.
Yeah.
They say that he is as dark as Romani and twice as sly.
Gross.
Yeah. So it's definitely in a derogatory way. So he's over 300 pounds. He's tall, he's greedy, and he's an insurance salesman.
Okay.
Who sells life insurance, which means you're thinking about death.
Oh, and that therefore bad.
Mm-hmm. And you're planning for death.
You're having forethought, and there, yeah.
That makes you evil. Oxford is pissed. He's like, why are you eating my donuts? Why are you on my ship? And he's like, any port in a storm. And he holds up 2 bottles of whiskey and he's like, for your troubles, Captain. And Oxford's like, oh, welcome aboard, because he's giving him booze.
Right.
Booze bad.
Booze are bad.
Snyder bad. Snyder sells Rusty a life insurance plan and tells him that he has a good credit score.
Based on what?
They don't have cell phones.
Yeah.
They don't have radios. They don't have any way of communicating with anyone. How would you know what someone's credit score was? It's bizarre. It is so bizarre.
I definitely feel like he's being scammed.
Yes.
Why do you need a credit score for insurance?
For a life insurance plan, that's probably a scam anyway, because this guy is shown to be like a scammer.
Oh, you look like you're not going to die for a long time. You'll be able to give me money for a while.
Right. But it's like he just buys it and the guy pockets the money and walks off. Like you don't even know if it's a real life insurance plan.
Right.
Like he's just buying a piece of paper. So Snyder's on board. They're trying to leave the shore and Gargal attacks. I don't know if it was because the captain was singing about whiskey or because they have Snyder, but Gargal's attacking. This time, Elf gets injured. Some of the water gets in his wound, and he gets very sick.
The shit water.
Yep. The boat gets kind of damaged and starts leaking. They get away from Gargal, so everyone's happy. Guess how they fought off Gargal this time, now that they have Snyder?
Harsh language? Wait, hold on. How would you fight off a sea serpent or a river serpent with a racist caricature?
It's the last thing you'll think of.
I'm racking my brain right now. I got nothing.
He's not completely fat. He has sticks of dynamite wrapped around his belly and he pulls them out and lights them and throws them at Gargal.
What the fuck?
This guy's thing is sticks of dynamite and he uses them through the whole book to get his way.
What the fuck? What the fuck is that supposed to represent?
I don't know. This guy is just the bad, violent, take what he want guy.
That doesn't sound like Romani people at all. Like I can't even think of like a racist reason for that to be Romani people.
I think they were just using the G word as a slur, and he's not actually meant to be Romani.
Oh, confusing.
But it was using it as like kind of like calling Elf elbow. Was just, this is a way to denigrate him or something. Was just using that language about him, but he's not actually Romani. Okay. Although he's shown to be a world traveler who buys and sells up and down river. His boat had sank. He was on the shore when they happened to be there, and he just walks on board and makes himself at home. And they just go with it.
More or less what James did, isn't it? Yeah.
So they just
but
go
it's weird
with
when,
it.
This guy doesn't.
Yeah, and then he comes on and he immediately wants to buy the boat from Oxford. And Oxford is like, this is my boat. This is my living. I'm not selling you my boat.
Right.
And this guy is just like weird and like wanting to take stuff. They needed to have an antagonist who was different than Gargal.
Is he capitalism?
Could be. He could be.
What, is there an allegorical reason for capitalism to like exploding things?
He is used to be made a lesson. Like they use him as a moral lesson at the end of the story.
Maybe he's materialism. I'm probably
could be greed. He could be greed. I think he because he's fat, he eats too many donuts. He's greedy.
Yeah.
A little rapey too.
Ew.
He never does it, but he's like wanting to. Yeah. So Elf is sick because of the water and Gargal, and he's afraid of evil spells.
First mention of magic I've heard so far, except for Elfo's forest sense that doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Evelyn says he's greatly afraid of evil spells and such. He mumbles about getting off the barge. He says midnight has tempted fate too often or something like that. He called the attacks omens of dire things to follow. He's sick. Everyone's taking turns taking care of him. I mean, like, they mentioned jinx, like, don't jinx us, that kind of thing. Mm. And then they scrape onto a shoal and they get stuck. Good heavens, said Evelyn. Doesn't this ship have any good luck? James stared at her and said, didn't you hear the captain say it could be worse? We're alive, aren't we, lady? It still beats swimming in this river. Like, everyone is just at odds with each other. Mm. And some people think that, like, the things they say and think is going to cause stuff. Yeah. And some people don't. Mm. But they make a point over and over that none of Oxford's trips have been this bad before. Mm. And it seems to be that either James is the cause of that, or maybe Elf, or maybe Rachel. Because each time it's different people on the ship with him. He keeps saying, like, oh, I've never had this much trouble on a river run. Mm. What have you guys done to me? Like,
these guys are throwing off the vibes.
Right. They also make a point, Oxford makes the point, that the river never looks the same each trip. Each time, the terrain looks different. The mountains are different sized.
Then it's unpredictable. You can't... Okay. Yeah.
No, like the landscape literally changes shape each time he comes down it. Huh. At one point he says, those mountains are awful bigger. They must be getting fat off the clouds or something. What? Like, literally the mountains are a different shape and size than they're supposed to be. And he can never tell where they are on the river at any given time. He just has a couple landmarks where he knows things are going to happen.
How is he going to shit on James for not knowing the river when it's constantly different?
And James asks him about that, and Oxford will not answer. He's like, well, how do you know when we're going to be close to the port of Jossandra? How do you know when we're at cool water? And he's like, oh, I just see the signs, lad. I just see the signs.
I just know shit. Don't worry about it.
Yes. And every time, everything is different. It's really strange. And it gives you that same alternate reality, alternate universe.
It's that weird dream logic. Mm-hmm. Like, you know a thing just because you know it's going to happen.
Yeah. But then you throw in really weird things like a credit score or wearing a t-shirt.
This all tracks with dream. Like, there's no logic here.
Yeah. So reading this, I'm like, oh, he's in a dream. He's like Alice in Wonderland. He'll wake up and everything's whatever, right? Yeah. So that part of that is done pretty well. They get free of the shoal, but there's water in the cabin, in the women's cabin. They pull everything out, and they finally get close to cool water. They're in the desert now. Mm-hmm. They finally got past the swamp, but they're in desert. Mm-hmm. It was leaking, so they're hoping they can get to cool water to repair the boat. Mm. They're taking turns having a watch at night. Elf is sleeping in the captain's quarters. Rachel is down there to give Sylvia a break, and she is wiping a cool washcloth across his face. Mm-hmm. Elf is having delirium dreams, a woodland nymph, and he's dreaming about his people. It's not clear if he knows that Rachel's the one taking care of him or not, because it's intimated he realizes Rachel's the one there. But his dreams are of an elfin lass that he loved at some point. He gets an erection, and Rachel is embarrassed.
Okay.
He saw Rachel rise and turn in awkward surprise. He viewed her as a woman for the very first time.
What the hell did he think she was before?
He hoped she saw him as a man, and not just a strange companion who made splendid music and spun delightful moods. He reaches up and grabs her nightshirt, and she pulls away, and the buttons tear off. He sees the roundness of her breasts, and she runs away. Elf falls back into tortured sleeping dreams. and the lovely wooden nymph vanished into mist, gone for good. He's sad, he feels sick, and he makes them think that he's dead. They get to cool water and he disappears. He leaves his violin on his bed and runs off into the desert. Rachel doesn't know what he did. She thinks he jumped overboard and drowned himself from shame. And she's like, loves him too, but she can't tell anyone what happened because she's mute.
Right. Hey, you know what makes me want to jump off a riverboat and drown myself in shame?
Oh my God, this book!
Ads.
Hello, Biblio freaks, geeks, and lovers. Bugs here. We wanted to let you know about our option to follow us on Patreon. We have a couple of tiers where you can listen to our bad book, bad movie review. We read a bad book and then we watch its bad movie counterpart. In the past, we've done Eragon, Shadow Builder by Bram Stoker, and we have a lot of different things in the future. Please let us know if you have any suggestions for future bad book, bad movie combos, and let's get back to the podcast.
And we're back to what the fuck ever this is.
I don't know. I am sorry. I feel I kept getting stuck in this book at around this point.
Yeah.
Because it feels like, oh, we're doing a Pilgrim's Progress. We're going along, do. Everyone's name says what they are, do. And then you hit these really weird things where it's like, okay, are elves real in this world? And he's so vague and noncommittal, I don't know if they are or not.
Yeah.
He says his people, and he's like a little person, but they also talk about humans.
It just sounds like he's vaguely fae or something.
Right.
Like, I know a lot of the definitions are really loose, but elves are very much a specific kind of thing.
It's not following the rules of fantasy that I'm used to, and that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
If he was fae or elven or from a specific kind of mystical universe, like you're following Celtic elves, you know, or fae, or they have their certain rules.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, you know, in the stories where if you ate the food that the elves gave you, you became their plaything. You don't ever eat in, you know, the land of the ladies and lords because you'll get stuck there.
A la We Free Men.
Yes. So in that way, it's like, well, James voluntarily took that green port or green death from Elf at the beginning of the story, and he went into his world. But this isn't Elf's world, and within this world, Elf is like lost and doesn't have his clan and doesn't have his people. And it doesn't follow any specific rules that an elven kingdom would. And that's what I was expecting.
Yeah.
I was expecting, okay, he's entered this land that Elf took him to. We have really strange logic, really strange rules. We don't have radios. We don't have phones. We do have credit scores. We have t-shirts. You know, so it's the technology is out of place and out of time. Sticks of dynamite are something you more expect from like the 1840s, you know, versus the 1980s.
Right.
It's really the pieces that are in the world building is not cohesive. The world building is bizarre.
Yeah, it sounds incredibly loose. Like, I don't know when this is. I don't know how this.
You don't know where it is because I thought, oh, he could drink at 18. Maybe we're in Australia. Maybe we're in the UK. And then bull snakes are in the Midwest. And I was like, oh, okay. But then we're on a river in the desert, and that's not the Midwest. Swampland? That's southeast, like Louisiana. No.
We're in anywhere America.
Anywhere but
somewhere
world?
America.
Because it doesn't It's not even expressed that he is American.
Right.
The world building is so disjointed and weird.
Sloppy.
I felt adrift and unable to pin myself on, okay, that's this type of book.
Mm-hmm.
It's that type of book. You know, even like Alice in Wonderland, the place itself was nonsense, but you understood everything within it was nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone was weird.
Yeah.
You didn't have normal people doing normal things in the middle of it and then feel like, wait, well, was that real or was this real? And this keeps having these scraps of normal life.
Mm-hmm.
And James, during this whole book, is like, where am I? This world is so strange. He'll forget Bethany. He forgets his previous life. And then something will remind him. And he's like, oh yeah, Riverton exists. I need to get back to Riverton. Rachel is upset because Elf, and it's not like he purposely tried to attack her or anything.
Right. He was like,
it was just
feverish.
A very awkward, bad interaction between them both. Rachel goes and gets drunk, and then she finds James. He's kissing her and then pulls away, and she's like wanting attention, and she's just kind of lost, but he's like looking at her like she's a child. So he's like, no, you should go to bed. Don't drink. It's bad for you.
High horse for James to be on.
Don't drink.
Yeah, the worst alcoholic I've ever heard of.
They pull into cool water. Dennis is watching the river. He sees Gargoyle, but it's swimming down the river past them. And James had not been drinking that night, and it ignored them.
I'm just thinking like Gargoyle knows of somebody down the river. He's like, somebody thought of masturbating. I gotta go get him.
So Gargoyle is just making his way down the river, minding his own business. Rachel jumps out of the boat and swims toward Gargoyle, like to commit suicide.
Sure.
James sees her, and everyone's trying to be really quiet so they don't get Gargoyle's attention. So James jumps in after her and swims after her, and they're fighting. So he puts his arm around her neck and she goes limp. And then he swims back to shore with her.
Jesus.
So it read to me like he knocked her out.
Killed her.
Have killed her to prevent her from getting Gargoyle's attention and getting eaten. And then they find out it's because Elf is gone and only his violin is on his bed. Mm-hmm. And she thinks that Elf is dead. And she tries to run off into the desert too. And she runs around like a gazelle or a deer. And they catch her and they tie her to her bed with a sheet. And she lays there like a placid doll.
If only Elf had some sort of sense to tell him that there wasn't a forest in that desert.
And the reason he is leaving is because there's no forest within 50 miles and he can't stand being on the boat anymore. He is going to plant his own forest here at Coolwater.
What? That was an option?
He has his 12 favorite trees. He has their seeds in his pocket.
Why are you
Dennis and James find him. They walk off into the desert like half an hour out, and they finally find him. And they're like, why don't you come and talk? And he's like, no, I can't. I just can't stay on that boat a day longer. I'll just die. Tell Rachel I love her like a sister.
Ew.
James and Dennis decide to not tell anyone they saw Elf and to pretend that he was dead.
And not give Rachel any peace.
They
which
decide
I guess they don't know
later
about.
to tell Rachel that he is alive. And so she slaps him because she's pissed that they didn't tell her before. So it's just this altercation. And then James kisses her. Dennis is pissed because he took advantage of her. It's this really bizarre.
That's a really confused scene, I think.
It is. It is. And that's like the next evening or something. It's like not that far.
Why is Elf trying to grow a forest in the desert? That's the literal worst place to try to grow things.
This oasis is called Coolwater. It's got like 2 palm trees or something, and it has a spring.
Uh-huh.
Oxford owns it, and that's where Turf decides to get off to. But Turf doesn't know that Elf is going to be there, and Elf doesn't know Turf is going to be there, so they have to keep each other company once they each realize the other person's there. But Turf gets off with his tractor, and he has seed, and he's going to use the spring water to create a farm.
Why is everyone trying to grow things in the desert? There's so much work.
Right. And this kind of felt like in Pilgrim's Progress, there were a few times they had It was like Wayside Inn or something, where it's like, this is the place where you get to stop and take a break. This is where the story is taking a pause and everyone's having a breath, you know? Kind of like in Lord of the Rings when you get to Rivendell or, you know, something like that where
the story takes a minute to just kind of breathe.
And we're not having any excitement. We're slowing down. This is like the halfway stop. This is where Oxford picks up fresh water. And this is where Turf is like, this is going to be this booming farm. Oxford can sell the fruits and vegetables up and down the river for me. We'll make loads of money.
But you never know if he's going to come back. I guess he did say that this is like a regular stop for him. I'm just so confused by the fact that the river changes constantly, but he always makes it back to this spot.
The spot stays the same. This is like the only spot that stays the same.
Yeah. Inconsistent.
It's very weird.
Yeah.
So Elf and Turf get off the ride. And I wish we could too. The next little bit of the story, they don't meet Gargle again during this part. And this is where Oxford says they have to be careful because the river splits. One half goes down Devil's Canyon, and one half is a gentle backwater. And if they pay attention, they'll follow the backwater down the river, but the other way, they'll crash and die. They have to watch for a lighthouse. And just after the lighthouse, they have to go left instead of right. Everyone is dealing with Turf leaving, Elf being gone. They all get rip-roaring drunk.
I mean, honestly, yeah, I would.
Oh.
I want to get drunk now. I was literally having that thought just a second ago. I was like, boy,
if I got drunk, I would not be able to explain this to you. I would not. I can't do this sober. I'm sorry. I couldn't do it drunk at all.
I think the author failed at this with this book because it drives people to drink instead of warns them against the dangers of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my God. They're going down the river. We're going to have a great big party. Whoa, we're all going to drink. Everyone's drinking. Even Rachel. She drinks and gets drunk and passes out on the floor.
So they untied her, I guess?
Yeah, they let her loose once they left the shore because she couldn't get away, I guess. Snyder and James get into a fight. Oh, so he's getting drunk and feeling sick because they're on the water. Reverend Dennis says, James, you don't look so good. And Snyder says, better stick your head out the porthole. Trouble with these youngsters is they don't know how to hold their drink. They don't pace themselves. The barge lurches, and Snyder bumps into James, who's leaning out the porthole, who turns around and yells, watch where the hell you're walking, elephant. What the devil are you trying to do? So the boat jerked. Snyder bumps into him because he's walking past. And James turns around and just chews him out. Snyder's like, watch your tongue. And they literally start breaking furniture and going at each other. Which Oxford comes down to break them up. And he's like, what are you bastards doing tearing up my ship? They have a huge fight. They throw pieces of furniture at each other. Oxford gets in and tries to stop them. And that causes them to miss the lighthouse and go down Devil's Canyon.
You guys were doing a bad thing, so you missed a thing.
You stopped Oxford from watching for the lighthouse. Dennis apparently doesn't know how to stop the boat because Oxford left him driving the boat. And he saw the lighthouse and knew that's when they were supposed to stop or something. But he just kept going and kept yelling for Oxford and didn't do anything. Like, there's no stopping. It was very weird. I was like, why would you leave someone in charge of the ship at this crucial point of the journey? Like, you're watching for this lighthouse right this minute.
Yeah,
I wouldn't go break up a fight if I knew the choice was Devil's Canyon.
Fuck them.
They can just knock each other out.
They're literally not his clientele.
No, they are
They're both getting a free ride.
They're both getting free rides. They hit like a rock or something, and Oxford hits his head on the helm and gets knocked out.
Oh, no.
Which leaves Snyder and James arguing about what to do. They get stuck on a shoal again. Snyder is like, I don't want to stay on this sinking ship. We need to all get off. And James is like, no, Oxford would want to stay on it. And at least we're floating. We're not sinking at the moment. Snyder steals James' fishing boat, falls into the river, and just takes off down Devil's Canyon and is gone. And they're like, well, he committed suicide. Oh, well.
Okay.
So Snyder's gone. James is like the one in charge when Oxford is unconscious and Snyder's not there.
Why? I figured it would be Reverend Dennis. Of course, Reverend Dennis did just kind of drop the ball, so.
I don't know why James is like the one they all look to and like, what should we do? Finally, so the boat comes free of the shoal. They go back down the river again. Dennis is like, let's pray. Don't trust in men or women or boats. Trust in God. And they make it through the canyon because Dennis prayed. And Oxford, of course, is like, oh, you did a good job steering the boat because we didn't die. And it's like, well, you know, God must have protected us. And he's like, you're dumb. And
Same.
it's like we keep having these risky things happening, but then nothing actually happens.
Right.
You know, we keep having these really high stakes, scary things.
Yeah.
And then they get saved from it really weirdly. Like nothing actually is cause and effect in the book.
The big bad situation, the punishment for drinking was you have to see a snake for a minute that's very easily
scared
away.
away by fishing poles.
Yeah.
What I haven't told you so far is that every chapter is opened with a quote from some fancy writer.
Oh, boy.
Like a C.S. Lewis book or something.
Okay.
And so chapter 12 is opened with, and the Lord spoke to the fish, and it vomited out Jonah upon the dry land. Jonah 2:10.
Okay.
It's just pretentious. It's so pretentious. This writing is not good. And before, the language goes from really flowery and overdone to just really basic, uninspiring.
He got tired partway through the book.
They've gotten through Devil's Canyon. They can see signs that they're getting close to the port of Jossandra. James is like, well, how do you know? Oxford says, because it ain't exactly set down. Can't you see how it is out here? You're getting to be almost as ordinary as Snyder was, James. James is saying, all right, Captain Oxford, let's say you don't stop at Riverton, but you can't go by some town and not have a name for it. Because Oxford is saying, I've never heard of Riverton. I don't know what you're talking about. Oxford's like, the heck I can't. I do it all the time. I even make up my own names for places. If it smells bad, I might call it Stink Town. I don't pay real attention to towns or any place unless I got business there. Some towns I avoid, like where I've been locked up for being drunk. I'm trying to mind my own business and you'd be better off doing the same. So he does this trip all the time, but he doesn't stop at towns. He doesn't know where Riverton is. And it really makes you feel like this is an alternate reality or an alternate dimension, that they really cannot communicate to each other where they are.
Right.
Like they are literally from different worlds. The river is in the same place geographically, but they are separated by like a veil.
Right. Honestly, I think if I were reading this, I would be convinced throughout that this is just a dream. Nothing is set in stone enough for you to be able to, you literally just can't
It
anchor
reads like a
yourself to
dream.
anything.
Yeah, it really reads like a dream over and over. And I'm like, okay, that's where we are then. This is a dream. We're doing like a Christian faith journey dreamscape. Okay. You know,
sure.
like we've done stories like that before where a person is in a dream, but you know it's a dream and that's the state that they're in.
Yeah. And that's fine.
That's fine. Yeah. So at this point of the book, I was like, okay, so this is like literally a different world. He's been saying all along, this feels like a different world. But now we're kind of establishing, yes, this place does not exist in his world, in his life. They get close, and they know they're getting close because of lakes, trees, grass, sheep grazing, and birds. Up till now, like I said, there hasn't been greenery, there hasn't been animals. This place is just devoid of
Detail.
Of detail, yes. It's like a video game. You haven't got to that point of the map yet.
It hasn't rendered out.
It hasn't rendered. And it only becomes green and lush and alive because they are near the port of Jossandra. They enter a large, like, bay, and that's where the port is. The port is a single pier.
Oh.
It's not a city. It is not a town. It is a house.
Oh.
Run by a woman named
What?
Abigail. This is like a retreat that a cult leader owns.
It's called the Port of Jossandra, but the only person that lives in Jossandra is Abigail.
There's people who live there, but they follow and serve Abigail.
Oh, okay.
She is like a cult leader goddess. Yes.
So is the town called Gisandra?
It's not a town. The pier is the port of Gisandra.
That's...
And it's Abigail's mansion.
That's misleading.
Because I was thinking, a city. We're on a pilgrimage to Jerusalem.
I was expecting like some sort of crazy trade hub.
Because that's how they talk about it.
Yeah.
All these people are going there.
This is really weird.
Really, really weird. Yeah, I thought that Gisandra was going to be Jerusalem or a big trade hub city, town. Everyone talked about it like almost like a monastery, like a pilgrimage to this place where all these people have all these problems solved. Right. And instead,
we get like this weird cult leader.
Yes, it is. It's a pier and it's like a wooded area. Trying to explain some of the geography. They pull in and then there's forest, and right next to it is a creek that is coming from Angel's Lake. So from the river, you can kind of see up this creek and see this lake on the inside, but the boat won't fit up the creek. You can just kind of see it.
So the lake is dumping into the river?
They pull up, and this feels like this idealized welcome, kind of like Rivendell, like this is your safe harbor. Cool water was your halfway point, but this is like the destination where everybody will have all of their dreams fulfilled. Jesse is wanting a family because he's an orphan. They promise him a family.
Oh, so this is like...
Dennis wears glasses, and he thinks he can regain his eyesight.
Is Abigail the wizard from The Wizard of Oz? Is that what this is?
Kind of like Galadriel. Okay. She's psychic. She knows that James is on the boat, even though there was no way to have known he was coming.
Right. I mean, we've already adopted magical thinking at this point. It's not too much of a stretch to say somebody just knows shit.
They are coming up on the pier, and James's gaze wandered inland to a wide path framed by pine trees. He was startled to see two statues seated on either side of a large flowered trellis. They appeared to be carved from stone and were positioned facing one another on marble benches. They disembark, and James was utterly shocked to see those classically sculpted statues rise to meet them. The two women rose together as if guided by a single silent command. Their names are Jaina and Faruka, and they are Abigail's handmaidens. They obey her, they do whatever she needs. And James guessed he'd mistaken them for statues because of their even features and flawless complexions, together with the fact that not the slightest breeze was blowing on shore to move their gowns or flowing hair.
So they're literally not animated.
Yeah. He finds himself staring at them. They're beautiful. Abigail is beautiful and perfect. I've never seen such perfect roses, said Reverend Dennis, because there's all these flowering plants. The trees are perfect. They are walking on this path beside the creek to go up. They meet Abigail, who is teaching the children something. So there's children there. There's people there. We don't really meet any of them. They just live here. This is like a retreat, I guess. Like a health retreat. But Abigail is the queen of the show. This is her place. This is her mansion.
This is kind of giving me vibes like, oh God, what was that? They made a Disney movie out of it. It's like these three magic ladies, and they were going through dimensions and stuff.
Oh, yeah. A Wrinkle in Time.
Yeah. See, okay. I could see the poster for the movie in my mind, but for some reason, the words I conjured up was "Star at a Winkle." So I knew that wasn't right.
No, Abigail is nowhere near as interesting as any of the characters in A Wrinkle in Time, because that's a really good book. I am going to stop us here because the last half of the book is fucking insane. Insane.
Good stopping point, though.
This is a good stopping point. They have met Faruka and Jaina. They meet Abigail. And the next half is going to be learning about the Port of Jossandra, learning about Abigail, their next little adventure. So this was really hard for me to structure. I'm sorry that it's been all over the place.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you just gotta get through the hard part to get to the good part.
There's no good part. No, I'm excited though. I'm so excited. The next part, oh my God, you're gonna have some spit takes. It's gonna be really fun.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you, Jay, for being our producer. Thank you, Bam Bam, for trying to help me keep on track with this. My goodness. This has been wild. And yeah, join us next time for part 2 of Eternal River by Thomas G. Young.
Yeah, hope you guys enjoyed. We'll see you soon.
Bye.
Bye.